This morning, we have Trung Tran on the show. Trung is the CEO of Amplio, and Amplio is a company that's helping everyone around the world avoid burnout. Trung, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate you having me on. I'm very excited to be here.
What non-negotiables or unusual things have you done for your health and performance so far?
I have a couple of issues that kind of hold me back a little bit. And so what's non-negotiable is for me to actually, do some exercise every day. I have a personal trainer I go to 3 times a week that I'll make sure that I don't miss those times, right? But beyond that, other non-negotiables, try to get at least 3 hours of sleep. Sometimes that's hard when you're working, but sleep's super important, and that's something that I'm constantly working on. But that's something that's important to me as well.
And there's a big overlap between burnout and sleep. So I'm surprised that you just shoot for 3. I get that you're a busy man, but
well, actually, it's different people. I mean, ideally, I would get 8 hours of sleep, but a lot of people just can't. And to be productive, sometimes you get what you can, and you kind of sleep in the weekend sometimes, and so it's very unrealistic sometimes to say, hey, go 8, 11 hours of sleep, and if you're independently wealthy and you have tons of time, then maybe you can, right? But if you're kind of person that likes a little pressure, likes to kind of keep working and enjoys what you do, sometimes sleep is the one that you have to force yourself to do a lot.
Yeah, I'm the exact same way. I have a hard time getting more than 8 hours of sleep. Even 8 hours of sleep is a stretch for me. So right. I feel you there.
Yeah, it's a nice goal, but it's unrealistic. I think the question is, how much sleep do you need to remain effective, right? If I don't sleep for 3 days, I'm not effective, right? I'm slurring my speech, you name it, right, kind of thing. Yeah. But if you're, if you don't need that much sleep and you actually get more tired if you sleep longer, just find the right set for you for your circadian rhythms. That's what we talk to our sleep experts about a lot, is understand your circadian rhythms, right? And try and get in tune with them, as opposed to just, having a set number of hours that you need to sleep.
I can't sleep 8 hours because by around 6 a.m., no matter the day, I wake up with energy and it's hard to fall back asleep. And on the weekends, I can really linger in bed and force myself to, but it's difficult.
That's your circadian rhythm. Your circadian rhythm says you have to be up at 6, right? And so sometimes, that I early in my career too, I was in the military, so I was up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, right? And for a long time, I couldn't sleep past 5, 6 o'clock in the morning because my body had been set to that clock. I've gotten good where I can sleep to 8, 9 o'clock sometimes, depending on how late I slept the night before. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the kind of normal way to your body works. So it takes a while to retrain your circadian rhythms, right? The problem is a lot of us are very not methodical about our sleep. So one day we get 2 hours of sleep, one day we get 8, one day we get 6. Even sleeping extra will screw up your circadian rhythm. So to the point that your body's trying to figure out how much sleep does he need, when does he need to go to bed. And so it's really about not necessarily the amount of sleep, it's about the methodicalness of making sure that you're actually training your body to the right circadian rhythm. And if you do a lot of weird things, it's really going to screw that up quite a bit.
Yeah, consistency around circadian rhythm is huge. And one of the best things you can do to maintain a stable circadian rhythm is to get outside and get morning sunlight first thing when you wake up. Another thing that I've heard that I like is to figure out how much sleep you actually need, whether or not you're grinding and hanging out 16, 17-hour days, is to go camping. When you go camping and you don't have any artificial stimuli, no phones, no screens, just you with the campfire, maybe in the night sky, then to see how your natural circadian rhythm is when you wake, when you sleep.
That's actually a great idea. I mean, I think, if you can actually, de-stress your mind, maybe even meditation before you go to bed, I think it's the same kind of thing where you're just completely relaxed. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. So tell me about your background. How'd you get started with health and performance?
Yeah. So, I was working at DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Project Administration, kind of DOD's kind of leading edge in research. And we were looking at next generation of AI. So, I mean, today you see is a lot of what we call first generation AI. AI is allowed to go see things. Second generation AI kind of predicts things, right? And the third generation AI kind of helps you make decisions and different courses of action. And so, okay, people really need advice, right? And we said, we need to build AI systems can do that. And we said, okay, where in most people's lives do they get the worst amount of information? And it really is around health and fitness, right? I mean, when you look at all the stuff out there in regards to coconut water or keto or this and that, there really is no one answer to anything, right? Then, when we talk about medicine, talk about precision medicine, they say something called epigenomics. Your environment and your genes affect how medication works for you, it doesn't work for you. And it's all very unique and individualized. And I think it's funny when we talk about one part of our body, in the medical case, when we're sick, being very specific to us, but we look at fitness and say, okay, everyone needs to do the same thing. It just doesn't make any sense. And so we thought, that's the perfect place where we can actually interject someone, an AI that can actually help people and counsel them to get better.
Yeah. In fitness, you go into your average gym, or I guess your average track, and actually, I guess track less so than the gym, but you get the same blanket movements, exercises, tempos, reps, sets, all of that. A lot of people find it online and just take that plan and run with it. But each imbalance, everyone has imbalances in their body, and each imbalance and exercise can either help correct or it can exacerbate. And so it's important to figure out your unique body and do the exercises that brings it back into balance and strengthens it.
No, absolutely. I think, the funny thing about our bodies, though, is that we compensate. And our body's like the world's best compensator. So you're injured or you're a little bit, if you have a back injury, all of a sudden your leg hurts, right? And so making sure that you, like I said, get back in balance, you can actually localize what's wrong, right? So get yourself back where your body's not balancing. I think it's funny that traditional working out has been like 30 or 45 minutes on a bike or something like that, right? Consistently, you don't change the tempo, you don't change the speed or anything like that. And people wonder why they weren't getting healthy, right? To the first order. And I think that's just funny because, if your body gets used to something, it doesn't really try hard. And that's the thing, right?
Mm-hmm. For the other nerds out there like myself, when you were at DARPA, what were some of the other things that you were learning and I guess technologies that were revolutionizing things?
I think, we've led a lot with the drones. We created a drone ship and interesting aircraft. I mean, drones, flying drones that actually can fight each other and kind of play chess against each other. There's a lot of technology around trying to help with decision making in general. For me, our focus is mostly on computers, and one of the things that I found very interesting is that and it's one reason why it led me to what I'm doing here at Ampio, is that the GPU was a mistake. When you look at the big step function in AI over the last decade or so, right, it was all fueled by the GPU. But the graphics card was made for me to play, Doom, was made for me to play those kind of games. And it just happened to have the same math that we needed to do AI, multiply and accumulate. So most CPUs run on an addition scheme, every logic unit, where it just does fancy adds to do multiplication, stuff like that. And so the GPU had a multiply and accumulate block, and that was just revolutionary, change things. And so, I look and I looked at it and said, there are a ton of advanced AI algorithms out there. Like, for example, the machine learning algorithms you have today have been around since like the 80s, right? But they're just not computationally feasible to do, right? Mm-hmm. Machine learning wasn't able, it would cost you over $1 million to run a machine learning algorithm. But with the GPU, it costs you $25K. And so that was a huge change in the dynamics and economics of AI. And so, looking at what these brilliant professors do in regards to math and realizing that computers are math engines, right, kind of thing. Yeah. I really understanding and learning kind of like what math's out there coming up that we can't compute, and trying to build machines that do that. It was really interesting for me as well.
When I started studying machine learning, I realized that a lot of it is just advanced math and statistics.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. In the next wave, the way we're working on in AI is probabilistic. Can you actually look at the probability curves and can you say, okay, our estimate of this is the probability of the world, and kind of getting out of the way of ground truth. There's like, if 2 + 2 = 4 is a ground truth, that's fine. But in a probabilistic sense, how close you are actually to 2. If the probability is that you're actually a little less than 2, or, in both cases, then you're not going to be 4. Right? You're going to be the odds are you're going to be something less than 4. And so, when you get beyond the idea that, hey, I haven't answered everything, I have the odds are good for something to happen, and you want to always increase the odds, right? You don't want to be like Han Solo and say, "Don't tell me the odds," kind of thing. But you want to be the type of person that can really kind of think through it. And I think that's where the next generation AI comes in, is that we're horrible at that. We, as human beings, we have a lot of assumptions, right? And we think the world's going to act a certain way just because, our beliefs or whatever our beliefs are, right? Kind of thing. And we don't really look at the odds. We don't actually think, maybe this isn't going to happen. It's supposed to rain today, and all of a sudden it doesn't. The weather forecasters are stupid, right? The odds are just not there, right? I mean, so that the odds of something happening 30% means maybe or maybe not, right? And so, I think probability curves are really the next math that probabilistic graph programming. I think Coulter's book was really influential for me, and so when you look at that kind of probabilistic math, is really kind of the next wave.
So you left DARPA, which many consider to be the cutting edge of technology and innovations across different domains.
Sure.
To start your own company. What went into that?
Well, when you work at DARPA, you work on a very specific problem, national defense, right? And it's super important. It affects a lot of people, don't get me wrong, right? But I wanted to start a company that helps everyone, right? Beyond just national defense. And when you look at health and fitness, we have the possibility of actually helping 7 billion people on Earth, right? Everyone needs help with, their mental health, their physical health, right? And so how do we help all these people? And I thought that was what's really compelling to me is that, the impact we could have. AI should have impact, right? And that's what I really think, so that we can actually make a significant difference in how people feel, how they act. And with mental health being such a huge problem these days, stepping in that arena is really important, and being able to help out there.
So tell me about Amplio.
Yeah, Amplio, we're a small company. We are pre-revenue, so we haven't quite got our product to market yet. We've got some significant pilots. One of them actually was really interesting, is we're doing one with the University of Maryland, where we're actually testing 100 people as they go into work. One of the things with the pandemic is, it's impacted us in a lot of different ways that we may not even understand, right? A lot of people feel anxious. They feel a little less sure. It can be seen in kind of the job movements that have occurred recently, where people are switching jobs because it's a big event, it's a trauma. And we're going to see how that trauma translates and how we can help people kind of adjust to the new normal. And so we're excited about that. So we have a product that are in people's hands, not quite revenue, but once we finish the pilot with Maryland, the pilot we have with the DoD, and one that we're working on with a commercial company, where we think we have a good idea of what the market will need and how people use it. And then we think we can go to market aggressively after that.
Tell me the high level, what does Amplio do?
Sure. So Amplio, what we do is we help you listen to your body. So we use biometric measurements, looking at heart rate, HRV, because not only do you physically have to be well, but your mind affects your body as well, right? We look at your sleep. We're looking at your nutrition. Then we also look at your mind with psychometric surveys and cognitive testing, where we look and say, what's your mental focus today? How much mental energy do you have? What's your mood like, right? And so we're looking to see, okay, what's your body telling you about your current state? Does it say that, hey, Nick's firing on all cylinders and everything's great and he's going to conquer the world? Or does it say, Nick's great in a lot of areas, but he's kind of hurting in this area, right? And being able to identify that to people, say, okay, you have a problem here. It's not very serious. It's something you can address early. And here's some suggestions we have based on our experts in the world. And as you kind of use that suggestion, we will tune it to you so that it becomes more customized to actually what the effect is for you. And we may switch things out depending on what works better for you. But the goal is that we help you identify what's wrong with you. We give you a routine that's customized and tailored to you, right? And we give you constant feedback where you're making progress. And so when you talk about burnout, most people don't know they're burning out. Most people just think they're enjoying their work, or you're just running really hard and they're, just having fun. And then all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, I'm tired. And why am I doing this? I'm disillusioned, right? And all of a sudden you want to leave the company. And so we want to be able to kind of give employees, the people, the sense of that. Right? What's starting to fall apart? What are my habits and what am I doing now that I can change to kind of balance things out more? Maybe I just had a kid and I can't work as hard as I used to, right? How do I balance that stuff out? And a lot of that stuff, amazingly, is not what we're taught. No one teaches how to find that kind of balance, or teach us to know when we're burning out. And I had a boss at Intel. He was a VP. Chris Norris was his name. And he said, Trung, you can be a rocket ship going straight up. You can be one at an angle. He said, you don't want to be the one straight up because straight up means straight down. Right. And so, kind of, his whole point to me is not work weekends, but but I was having fun. I was enjoying what I was doing. So sometimes you just don't think about it. Right. Yeah. But, that's kind of idea for us. That was really good advice for me when I was younger. And I want to build an app that kind of gives people that same advice. Right? Hey, you're really pushing the limit of what you can do. You're not going to be happy regardless of the result, right? Why don't you back off a little bit? You can still get the result done. And that's really kind of the essence of what we're trying to do here. Something you listen to your body, listen to kind of what's it telling you need help on, get that help so you can actually manage yourself so you don't burn out.
I like that. It augments the messages of the body, making it easier to learn to listen into.
Yeah. Because a lot of times we ignore it, right? Especially if you're like really into a project or, you're training for an event and you're really into that training, right?
Yeah.
That's why people get injured, they overtrain because they're not listening to their body, right? But, with the biometric information we get from wearables and, with the surveys we have, we're always listening to your body, right? And making sure that's at the forefront of what you need to know.
Mm-hmm. So that means you must be on the forefront of like studying and researching all the latest wearables and what's coming down the pike. Tell me about some of the new technologies you're seeing there.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a wearable agnostic. There's $64 billion being spent on wearables, so we didn't think we need to build another one. We think what we're really excited about is electrodermal analysis, right? That's basically a galvanic skin response where we measure the contents of your sweat, right? And that's pretty good. It's pretty new, revolutionary. It will help understand the amount of cortisol and how much stress you're actually doing because it actually measures it, as opposed to kind of estimating it from HRV.
Is it just for measuring cortisol?
No, it can actually measure mood. There's other hormones that it looks at, right? But stress is the one that they mostly focus on from that standpoint. The other one that's super interesting is pulse ox, SpO2. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, when you work out or you do compound exercises, you forget to breathe. Remember, your trainer always said breathe and breathe. Yeah. Because you're focusing on it's like chewing gum and walking at the same time. Sometimes it's hard to do the exercise and breathe at the same time. And so, a lot of times, we get tired and our muscle fatigue occurs faster because we're not breathing, right? And then even during the day, when you're stressed out, your breathing's not consistent, and from that standpoint, that raises your blood pressure because your heart's pumping more often, right? That's like when you get excited, you get hyperventilating, stuff like that. Everyone tells you to take a breath, take a moment, take a breath, right? Yeah. That's really to kind of calm down, get your oxygen back into your body, get your brain moving. And so getting a real-time SpO2 as opposed to just going to the nurses, when you go to the doctor, they always stick your finger in that machine, right? Mm-hmm. And get your numbers there. I mean, it's pretty dramatic. If you're like below 70, you're dead, right? And even if you drop below 95, 94, your body's you're being asphyxiated, right? You're supposed to get 98, 99 all the time. That's not true. Obviously, things move in your life, things are happening, right? If you're running really hard, you're going not to breathe as well and not get as much oxygen into your body. And that's when you stop exercising, you're not converting fat to energy because you don't have oxygen.
Yeah. I've noticed that when I do breath work, some of the different modalities, I can get under 90%, but it's only temporarily.
Right. Yeah, you don't do that too much, but it kind of gets a little scary. But yeah, I mean, that's what you want. I mean, I think, you want to be aware of how well you're breathing, and we're not going to think about it at all. And I think, since oxygen is like 99% of all your body functions, because it uses it to burn energy and do this kind of things, not getting enough is kind of a serious thing, and people just don't pay attention to it.
It's one of my favorite metrics of the Oura Ring, the respiratory rate at night, because from that you can figure out how taxed you're going to be when you wake up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole point of sleep apnea, so you're not breathing well, right? And having some kind of feedback in the machine, sleep apnea is great, but also realizing that there are a lot of things that may not help, you may not sleep well in because you're under stress or those kind of things, and that does prevent your brain from going to the deep kind of sleep that you really need to re-energize. So I mean, I think that's super important. And companies are starting to integrate that into their watches and other wearables, right? So I think it's going to be really interesting to see all the new gadgets that come out, right?
Let's take a step back now and talk at a high level. If you were to classify all the activities and lifestyle factors into buckets, what would you say that are your pillars of peak performance?
It's interesting. We had a study with Major League Baseball players. I worked with a lot of collegiate athletes over the last 3 years, and they're all pretty much at peak physical form, right? And unless they're injured, they can perform, right? They're at the 98th, 99th percentile. And what we realize is that just because you're physically able to do something doesn't mean you're mentally are able to do it, right? A lot of times, these people, because they're such physical specimens, have never had to actually watch what they eat or watch what they sleep. They just bounce back, right? And so they have some pretty bad habits. And so, mentally, just helping them focus and get their mind in the right area. So I think the mind is the most important thing, because if you can visualize what you're doing and you can actually think through what you want to do or how you perform the act, then you can actually, perform it, right?
So you're an advocate of visualization.
I'm an advocate of visualization. I'm also an advocate of just positive reinforcement. When you have to believe. You're not going to do something you don't believe, right? And also very much a focus of routines and focus, where if you have an organized life, right, and you kind of spend less of your mental energy every day trying to figure out what you're going to do next, right, then you're much better off. When I look at these elite guys and how they kind of manage life, and I look at like executives and stuff like that, the reason why you have an assistant is for mostly to have everything in your life taken care of for you. So you don't have to think about it. You don't think about what you're cooking for dinner. You don't have to think about, that's why pre-preparing meals and all that's good, because the less you have to think about those kind of things, the more you can focus on what you're trying to do. And that's usually for a baseball player prepping for the game.
Yeah. And decision fatigue is a real phenomenon.
It's a real thing. Yep. Yeah. I mean, especially, it leads to confusion, and you don't want that kind of cognitive fog in your head while you're trying to do something important.
By the end of the day, it's easy just to kick back and say, oh, well, I'm exhausted. It's been a long day. I'm just going to have this ice cream, or I'm just going to sit back and watch TV for a couple hours because I'm tired.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, you spent your day focusing on what you need to, and you actually will feel a little more refreshed too at the end of the day, right? Because you haven't spent the energy on that, right? I mean, one of the things that we work with Chris Talley, who's a world expert nutritionist, right? He said, the reason why we look at antibodies in food, not that you're necessarily super allergic to it and you're going to get hives or whatever, but every piece of energy, every calorie you can have, right, should be burnt towards what you need to do. And if your body's producing white blood cells, antibodies to go fight food, like I was mildly allergic to eggs and milk when I took his test, that's energy is taken away from your body. It's not helping it repair things and do those kind of things. So, and the same thing with mental fatigue. Your brain's working on things that don't really matter, and you're kind of in the back of your head, you're taking away cycles from your brain that could be focused on more important things.
Understanding food sensitivities is more important than allergies, because allergies you notice very quickly.
Right.
I get this, I get a bad reaction, I should stop eating this. Simple. But the intolerances and sensitivities, it can lead to chronic inflammation, and ultimately food is information. The micro-RNA in like real produce, for example, influences your genetic expression, your epigenetics, so that if you're getting the wrong information, your body is not compatible with the food, and you continue to ingest it every single day, you can just imagine what message you're constantly sending your body.
No, I said absolutely. And that's things like, a lot of the tiredness fatigue we find is that because we've used our brain, and we don't think about these things, right? They say don't think about what you eat and how much your body's being spent, just like you said, reacting to the wrong messages from the food you're eating, right? And it's battling yourself, right? Kind of thing. So imagine, if you can actually not be fighting your own body, be actually, able to clear your mind, how much more relaxed you can be, because, you're taking that percentage of energy away from your total energy in the day. All of a sudden you get tired quicker, right? Mm-hmm. You're really on a bad food binge and you're eating worse food, you're going to get tired quicker, right? It's not just tryptophan and turkey, you eat the wrong food, you're going to get tired. And because your body's spending more energy processing it, right? Or trying to do something with it than you want. And if you feel tired, then you're not productive anyway, shape or form.
What's next on your list of areas to focus on?
Is emotional stability. People don't really realize that, I call everything in the body kind of a equilibrium system, right? So you take diabetes as an example, right? Your blood sugar's high, right? Because you ate a bunch of food, right? And then your blood sugar's low when your body processes that food. into the energy that you need, right? Kind of thing. And so your blood sugar is never stable. It goes up and down depending on what you eat in a day. And it has dramatic effects, depending on when it goes down, when it goes up, and how you feel and how you react, right?
And how high it goes up or down.
How high it goes up and down, right? Obviously, that's diabetes, right? If it's unregulated. And the same thing is true for emotions. People don't realize that, right? People think they have to be happy all the time, right? Or that, if they're not happy, something's wrong with them. No, I mean, your body's self-regulating. That's when manic depressives have real problems, because they're too high manic or they're too high depressive, right? They're not cycling back and forth. And so the question is healthy to sometimes feel sad. And I know some of my ex-girlfriends may be thinking back now, like saying, I told you so. But in regards to that fact, right? It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be, happy, right? The question is, how long are you in one of those cases? And that can be, emotions are kind of like cortisol for nutrients. Cortisol will burn through nutrients faster than anything like exercise. So if you're under a constant stress bubble, you eat your nutrients faster than if you ran a marathon. Right. And same thing with emotional stability. If you are your manic or depressive, or you're on kind of a cycle, you have to kind of correct that, because it burns more of your energy mentally than you would ever believe. Right. And so, it wrecks your overall approach to life, how you look at things. And so I think the next thing is emotional stability, right? Dealing with things that, upset you, trying not to get upset. Yeah. Right. How about little things that don't matter? And try to get out of that either the negative or the over optimistic thing. But again, you got to keep in mind that you regulate. So you got to make sure that you don't beat yourself up if you have a down day, right? Now, you have a week of down days, then you should do something about it, right?
I've only started learning about and studying emotional health in the last 2 years. And I've noticed that there's pretty much two camps. There's the one camp that sees emotions as either non-existent or not important or completely overridable 100% of the time, signal to be ignored. And the other that says you should listen to your emotions. You shouldn't exert any of your own autonomy or control over them. You should just let them be. And if you're down, you're down. You're up, you're up. Just roll with the punches, basically. And I'm surprised how little overlap there is between the two, and how few people are saying, hey, it's good to have some of both. You should listen to them because they're ultimately messages. But at the same time, if you're constantly up and then you crash down and then you spike way back up very quickly, it's going to take a toll on you physically, mentally, obviously emotionally.
Well, and that's a lot where addiction comes from too, right? Medicating and to kind of regulate it, right? And your body stops regulating it. So, the whole let's not listen to your emotion things is bad, because that's what happens with drug addicts, right? To a certain extent, they're not regulating their emotions anymore because they're medicating to get over it, right? That kind of thing. And so, you do want to listen to your body. You can't just ignore it. But at the same time, you can't be overly, like I say, you have a string of bad days, if you're a pitcher, you're going on a bad run, you have to start thinking and doing things to kind of change your mood, try and change how you're doing, because you can't just accept the fact that everything's going downhill, right? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, that just cascades. And so, I think it's kind of both things where you listen to your body to some extent to make sure that, you are helping the regulation. But the idea, though, we're a chemical machine, right? And so, whereas nutrients that feed in hormones that regulate our body, or it's like dopamine and stuff that regulates our mind and our emotions, right? Kind of thing. Your body's producing it for a reason. Right. And that's, again, why listening to your body is super important. Right. Whereas mentally you feel depressed or you feel anxious about something. Right. And it's producing the hormones that kind of leads to that kind of depression, or you're super happy. Right. You have to listen to that chemical while your body is doing and really fix what's wrong, as opposed to you ignoring it, which is what we mostly do. Right. That's the cat you talk about here. Just ignore it. I'm in charge of my world. I'm in charge of everything. Yeah. We can listen to it and try to see what we can do to kind of help the body before it gets to the point where we have to medicate, right? Where it's gone too bad.
Yeah. And your thoughts are electrical signals, and those electrical signals influence the chemical releases that happen throughout your body.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. I guess, your mind, the funny thing is that your mind lives in this virtual world. And so, how it sees your body, how it sees it's doing is how it regulates it, right? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily always listen to what's really happening in your actual body. So a lot of times people ignore pain, They ignore other things because they're in this virtual world where they just decide to discount those things, right? They compartmentalize when they feel sad and they just don't allow themselves to be sad. All those things are things that could potentially be very harmful because, again, you need to be able to do that regulation. And if you can't regulate, then you can't survive, right?
Mm-hmm. What are some of the things you've learned about performance through DARPA and your experience starting this company?
I think the biggest thing I've learned is there's a separation between skills and abilities. Skills can be taught, right? I mean, I think, you may never be Michael Phelps, but you can learn how to swim really well, right? You can learn the skills and mechanics of it all. And that a good coach would always teach the right skills. Ability is a little different. Ability is kind of like what your natural traits are. Sometimes your personality traits will determine kind of what you're good at and what you're not good at, right? And so it's true that 10,000 hours is what it takes to be an expert at anything, right? But you really have to have the I call it abilities, but you call it attributes. You have to really like it to spend 10,000 hours doing it. And you have to, just obviously you don't have like arms and legs. It's hard to play a guitar kind of thing, right? Have some of the minimum abilities, but that personality trait is really super important. And traits-based kind of testing is not how we do things. When I was at DARPA, with one of the problems is what's the next generation of soldier? I always say, Steve Rogers before he became Captain America, back in the day, you could tell who's the best soldier, who's going to run 13 miles, 100 pounds on their back, right? Kind of thing. These days, most soldiers don't run 13 miles with 100 pounds on their back. They're either mechanized vehicles or they're, flying drones back in the US and stuff like that. There's a lot more cognitive skills that are important, right? And traits and abilities. And so, and cognitive skills are a little bit harder to measure. We definitely measure with our own games and tests, right? But they're not like visually, I can't look at Nick and say, okay, is Nick super smart or it's not, right? You just can't tell from a person's outside, right? I mean, other than like if you go into like the geek or nerd stereotypes, right? But is someone really capable? You don't know. And I think that's the harder thing. And so a lot of the coaches I talk to at the elite level, that's what they did, the non-tangibles, right? Are what they really focus on and trying to understand, do they have the desire, the will, the ability to go do this stuff, right? Not the skills, because they can get coached to skills. And I think the best example is that's Tom Brady. Because you look at Tom Brady, when he went for the NFL Combine, he ranked last at every quarterback statistic. Every way you could measure a quarterback, he was last at, right? But there was something in Tom Brady that just wouldn't let him quit. He had desire. He was going to do those 10,000 hours. He's going to be an expert at it, right? And he's going to try hard. A lot of people who were already gifted didn't try that hard, right? Or didn't care as much. And so I think Steve Marriott said he wished he could break open his heart and look to see what's inside, right? And so, I think that drive is something that is inherent. And I think it's inherent in everyone, depending on the field. Like I might be super driven in, AI, but other people may be driven in cooking or anything like that. And trying to link up what you have the ability or desire to do, again, with someone to teach you the skills, I think you'll succeed. And I think that's a big part of being successful, not just but today's society it's all about, are you next LeBron James? Are you genetically gifted, right? Kind of thing, And so that's the balance I learned, and those things about performance is, desire is a huge component, and desire will build into you doing what it takes to do the 10,000 hours.
Yeah. And one of my big fears growing up was that I'd get about 9,000 hours into something and realize that it just wasn't for me. Do you have any tips for someone earlier in their career to figure out what they should be focusing on for 10,000 hours or longer?
Well, the thing is, people try to do this with their kids when they're too young, but because, the kid doesn't need to be at 12 different activities, right? Let your kid be a kid sometimes. But I think when you're in college, I think college is the one time you're actually with a bunch of people who are different than you. There's different colleges, different schools, different things like that. And after you graduate from college, you've chosen a career and everyone around you is like you, right? Kind of thing. They're all doctors or lawyers or whatever the career field is, right? Engineers. And so at that time, try everything. Meet as many people as you want, get different perspectives, right? Try different things. And a lot of it is talking to other people and seeing, who have done the 10,000 hours. Understand really the commitment. Everyone likes to be Michael Phelps, but no one, during the Olympics when he wins the gold, no one wants to be Michael Phelps as an 11-year-old at 5 a.m. in the morning swimming, for an hour and a half.
I'd say no one wants to be outside of the Olympics because that's so much. They don't realize all the training, the mental, the physical, the emotional that's going on behind the scenes and how it's all consuming.
Right. And the thing is, and as you say, as younger, when you look at what it really takes to be successful, right? And you have to ask yourself, am I willing to go do that? Do I like this enough to go do that? And the answer is, I'm not sure I like it that much to go do that work, right? Then you kind of get your answer what you want. And you can try it out and see how hard it is, how much you like it. But I think that's the first question. It's like, realize what it really takes to be successful. Everyone thinks there's an overnight success thing, or, you wake up one morning and you're a superstar or something like that, right? There's a ton of work involved. And if you like the work, you'll be successful, right? If you hate the work, no matter what you do, like if your parents force you into a career that you just hate, you're never going to be successful at it, right? You'll eventually fail out and do whatever you like to do, right? So finding that thing is important, and really understanding what it takes, because people get, fascinated by the gold medals, like you say, fascinated by the fame and the glory. They want to be that, but they don't realize how much effort it takes to do it, right?
One other thing around desire, I think there's a misconception that this type of person, this quarterback, this celebrity, has just this extreme passion. That's just who they are. But the thing is, if you take them to other areas of life, other disciplines, they probably won't have that same passion. They'll be just like you or I. So it's really tapping into yourself and figuring out what draws out your inner desire, your curiosity, your growth.
Not everyone's good at everything. And I think there's a lot of people who put pressure on themselves to be good at everything, right? Yeah. And it's again, it's waste of calories. I think a life of efficiency is probably the best. You don't eat foods that cause you to be sick. You don't let things kind of distract you from what you're trying to do. And, you don't work on something that you're not committed to, right? Just because it makes you look good or it makes someone happy. It's like, to really be successful, focus on one thing, focus on what you really desire to do, your purpose you call in your life, right? Kind of thing. And if you do that one thing, it helps a ton in regards to making you feel better about what you're doing. And feel like the sacrifices are worth it, right? Because that's the thing. It's like, to do anything, life sucks. You're getting kicked, down, people can tell you all sorts of bad things about you, right? Like Tom Brady, oh my gosh. Can you imagine him in draft night? Everyone telling him he sucks and he's, 6th round in the draft and, 5 quarterbacks ahead of him, stuff like that, but if you really like it and you think you can be really good at it, right? And you really want to work hard at it, right? Then it doesn't matter what people say. And that kind of gives you kind of the fortitude to keep going, I think.
Yeah, because there's ups and downs along every journey. And those downs can feel a lot worse when you're in them than they do in hindsight. But it's what are you willing to persist through? And that will help dictate what you should pursue.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, if you don't like it enough, like if you don't like your girlfriend enough to go through a bad time, then you probably shouldn't be with her. If you don't like a job or anything to go for a bad time, then don't be at that job, right? Yeah. You have control of your life. You can go change the parameters, right? You always have a next day to go forward. But so it doesn't make sense to do things you don't like or you won't persevere through when things go bad.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of parameters, tell me about some of the AI behind Amplio and the technology that sets it apart from so many other devices, apps on the market that all help optimize performance.
Well, the first thing we do that other people don't do is we don't do population studies. And so we learned early on when we work with long distance runners in Colorado that, this guy said, I'm 6'4" and she's 5'3", Trung. I can't run like her. Right. Different body dimorphisms. And so there was no one way to run. Right. If your legs are longer than my legs, you can't run like me. We can't have the same gait. We can't have the same stride. And so when a lot of people do big population studies on sleep and stuff like that and say the average is this is the way it works, then who's average? Who's the best way to run? And so we build ours only on individuals' data. That's how we personalize it to you. We try to see how you look in regards to your baseline and try to learn what Nick is on a constant basis, right? We want to learn when Nick is happy, when Nick is sad, and or not performing well. Sad is probably a better word. And say, okay, what are his measurements? What's his body telling us, right? What's he signaling? What's it signaling to us when he is not doing as well, right? What's the signal to us when he does really well? And then say, okay, these are the areas he needs to work on, right? And it takes a little bit of time. It takes about 4 weeks to truly personalize it for you. But the idea is that, we just want to listen to you and your data. And wearables give us a great opportunity to do that because they give us so much data. Data is being collected in 1 second increments on you all the time from your wearable device, right?
And it's hands off too.
It's totally hands off. And so it's not something you have to, worry about turning on or turning off. And so we get tons of data on you, and we can just work off of you and look at, how changes to your baselines occur. And like I say, with the whole, what makes Nick perform well, what doesn't make Nick perform well is what they call causal model in AI. And again, we're looking at probability distributions, right? So we want to see how many times you actually perform well, how many times you didn't, and look at what the component factors are that we're measuring. I said, this is what is the characterization of Nick when he's doing well. This is characterization of Nick and within a probability distribution. And then we say, okay, if I change this factor, what's the probability that Nick will get to where he wants to be? He's here today, and he needs to be here tomorrow, right? What can we do today to kind of get Nick there, right? And that's how we kind of prepare people. That's how we're helping the baseball players prepare as they kind of get go into a game. You never actually, the funny thing that we actually learned from the players as well is, and we don't do, our AI doesn't tell you you're not ready, right? No one wants to hear before a game that they're not ready to go play, or, that they're not ready and they feel like, we were talking to someone who was using a wearable, and he said his rating to score is low. But he's like, I feel fine around a marathon, right? And now I feel like there's going to be something wrong with it, right?
That's the nocebo effect. So if I have a bad night of sleep, I wear the Oura Ring. If I sleep poorly, I will not check the score until later in the day, because I know that if I check it in the morning and I see a terrible score, or if I even sleep well and I see a bad score, maybe the sensor is off a little bit and the data is just inaccurate, then I'll be in this negative mindset around my sleep the whole day, and I'll be like, I should be feeling tired because I only have a 50 sleep score. Is that tiredness? Yeah, that is tiredness. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And then just like I'm implanting these ideas in my own mind that don't need to be there.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the one thing, when AI used by other people just looks at patterns and gives you a score without any context, right?
Yeah.
For us, we're more focused on basically the second piece of AI that we work on is recommender system. Is trying to recommend things that you will actually do that actually help you get better, right? And it's showing a positive effect over time with you, right? Yeah. And so we want to recommend things that, help you get better. And that's things like, showing you a number, which is what a lot of people do, graphs and numbers, has that placebo effect, because everyone wants to be 100, right? Everyone wants to have really high scores. But, if you're normally a 30 and you're a 50 today on that radius meter, you're doing pretty good, Nick. You know what I mean? Independent what 50 is for the general population, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
For you, normally you're 30, so you should feel good about yourself, and you should. So it's more about trying to help you interpret information, not just tell you suck or this or that. Interpret information. What can I do to get better? Do I need to do anything to get better? Right? And that's, I think, more important than that's the third pressure AI is building that recommender, so we can give you things that you can actually do and accomplish, right? And get you better. And a lot of that has to do with just understanding your preferences. Like if we give you a recommendation, you don't do it. We're learning over time what you're really willing to do and how much effort you're going to put in.
To highlight what you said earlier about the differences between individuals, there's a great book that I think you'd like called Biochemical Individuality by Roger Williams. And he methodically goes through the entire body and shows how from one person, from one extreme to the next, there can be a 50-fold difference between people in terms of enzymes, hormones, size, which in biology, size dictates function. So you can imagine if you're running a study and you see all these extremes on either side, and to make it meaningful, you average them away. And then all the nuance, all the individual difference between people is lost. But when in reality, it's possible that there wasn't a single person who was the average across the board.
Last thing, when you look at what a middle income person is, when you actually see the graph, there's a lot of people on the poor side, a lot of people on the rich side, and there's almost no one in the middle, right? And that's exactly the thing that we worry about. It's you lose a lot of that nuance, and you really want to understand the individual. That's why we only build our models off of that. Now, we did averaging and stuff like that from a statistical standpoint because we're human beings, and we can't deal with a lot of individual little things, right? But that's why AI is good, because our AI is specific to you. It doesn't know anyone else, right? It's just trying to understand you, and we can replicate that. And so instead of having 100 presidents, for every person, a president for every person, to kind of understand what they need, and so they do these generalized things for the government, right? We actually have an AI that literally only exists because you exist, right? If you don't give it data, it just doesn't do anything, right? And so from that standpoint, we really want just to listen to that individual, right? Because there are differences, and I think one of the shames of society today, especially social media, is the whole comparison thing. Everyone's trying to compare themselves to someone else, right? And genetically, you may never be. I mean, I would love to be freaking LeBron James, but genetically, it's just not going to happen, right? I'm never going to be that tall. I'm not going to be able to shoot basketballs that well, right?
Yeah.
Why compare myself to him at all then? I'm not him, right? And we're all kind of uniquely gifted, I think, and like we talked about earlier, and what we desire and what we can be good at. And a lot of times we fail because we're comparing ourselves and we want to be like XYZ person, and we spend our whole lives feeling like we're a failure because we don't live up to that standard. Doesn't make any sense.
I think what it is it's hard. There's no like objective measure of how we are doing. So we look around us at people who are considered role models and say, how do I stack up compared to them? Even though my body, my mind, my life, it's completely different, but still, like, how can I approach their level of performance?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And the thing is that, you may just need a different path, right? You can't just follow the path he did because he's genetically gifted and whatever. You need a different path, and it may take you longer, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong, right? And that's the thing. It's like, that's why it's so important to listen to yourself and listen to your body and not worry about those comparisons. Like you said, how do we get to objective measures? And that's what we're trying to give you, some objective measures, right? Yeah. But again, it should be on your baseline and what makes you better, as opposed to what makes me better or anyone else, right? One of the Olympic athletes we talked to say, Trung, whenever I go to a coach, he said, you need to do this because the last guy that did it was successful doing it. I always get mad. I'm like, why do you get mad? He's like, well, I'm not that guy, right? It was because his coach had asked him to put a bunch of muscle mass on, right? Get like bulk up, and it threw off his skiing. Because he was, his weight was different than he's used to, and the way he kind of did angles, because it's all about angle or momentum, right? Where you shift your weights to control the skis. And so he did horribly. And then the coach had him cut a bunch of weight, right? And so he's like, I don't do it just because someone else did it, right? Figure out what works for me and help me get better, right? And I think, when at least athletes are saying that, right, we should all demand that. Right, from everyone around us. I know it's easy to have one size fits all, but it's normally never helpful.
Yeah. Have you come across any unusual or surprising results from those beta testing Amplio?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was super interesting is that we were working with Cal Poly Pomona's track and field team, and one of their highly recruited runners, she wasn't performing the way they expected to. Actually, was getting worse week to week. And when Chris Bradford, who was the head coach, he's like, normally, we would think it's kind of motivation problem and make her run harder. But we had numbers, and the numbers said that, her running mechanics looked good. So she knew how to run, right? She seemed to be sleeping okay, but her testosterone got cut in half. And so when you're like, testosterone is just important for women as men. It's a 15x number, but testosterone is how your body recovers, how it rebuilds muscle, right? And she had been raised in a family that didn't drink a lot of caffeine and didn't have a lot of soda. And she went to college. Her going wild was drinking a ton of coffee and caffeine, and it just hammered her testosterone numbers, right? And so from that standpoint, we said, okay, that's what's really wrong with her. So we had to get her a nutritionist and help her kind of figure out how to, stay awake in class and stuff like that as she kind of went to the whole college scene. But I mean, it's surprising, like, how little things can have a huge impact on you. Even if you're like, the world's best runner or whatever, right? It's, you're drinking too much caffeine, and it's so important to say, why do I feel tired all the time? Why aren't I getting stronger, recovering? And running is such a brutal sport. It tears down the muscles and stuff like that. And so if she's not recovering, she would either have been burnt out and quit or get hurt. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the thing.
It's a fast track to overtraining and then eventual burnout if you don't correct it.
Yeah, or major injury.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you guys measure blood biomarkers too?
We do. I mean, we don't cover the cost of the test. So we have the Major League Baseball players. They pay for a $3,000 30-page blood test. We can go all the way down to what we did with Cal Poly, which is a finger prick test with ZRT labs. But you can do like BeWell. There are a number of places that take little blood markers for you, right?
Mm-hmm. Do you guys allow like users to import the results into the app?
Yeah, they can do that. And from that standpoint, we will track that, and we want to get the overall picture. Like a readiness score is usually based off something called HRV, heart rate variation, and but heart rate variation is an effect, not a cause. So it could be because, like in her case, it was low because of her nutrition, right? Mm-hmm. It could be because she overtrained the other day. It could be because she didn't sleep well. You have to start knocking all those things off, right? To really get to what's wrong. Otherwise, you're trying to fix the wrong problem.
Yeah.
Right. Like I said, have her run more, right? Maybe that's not the answer to the problem. Yeah. So that's the idea.
Okay. Let's start to wind down. I have a couple more questions for you before we get to the rapid fire round.
Sure. No problem.
You've clearly absorbed a lot of different information and knowledge from different domains. And I know that from reading a research paper put out by DARPA, that there's certain technologies, like one called cranial electric stimulation, where you put electrodes in different parts of the, I guess in this case, actually shoulder and the temple, and it can increase like the ability to learn the speed by like up to 30 or 40%. So have you found anything like that, any techniques or processes that you use to learn faster?
I actually, it used to be called the Genius Program when I was at DARPA. But it's the reason why they do this is a big nerve here. It has a billion nerves in the bundle, and they shock the entire thing. And they don't know exactly which nerve stimulates the learning, but it happens to stimulate learning, right? Kind of thing. And I think, we were doing testing at Tufts with the Army Performance Lab with shock belts. And sometimes, people build up resistance to it. Mm-hmm. And you have to kind of keep increasing the shock. We're trying to reduce stress, right? And they eventually start burning themselves, right?
Wow.
And so I'm like, worried a little bit that, you're shocking your venal nerve, and, and your body suddenly gets used to it because your body adapts and compensates, right?
Yeah. The one I was thinking of is just like a very small microcurrent of like 1 milliamp. So it's like very low, like less than a battery.
No, I agree with that. Yeah. But eventually, if you get used to it, do you bring it up to 2 milliamps? You build up 10 milliamps, still get the same effect, because if you do it longitudinally over time, you're going to get used to it eventually. And that's what I worry about a little bit. I'm not talking about thousands of volts on your venal nerve, no, but I don't know what the long-term effect of burning it out is. I think from a standpoint of how to learn faster is to learn from other people. I think the thing is, if you want to learn like a different career, different things, be open to talking to people how they do it, right, and learning from them, and not repeating their mistakes. Now, a lot of people say, hey, I'm going to learn, but I'm going to start running on my own and figuring this stuff out myself and reading a ton of books. Getting a coach would be good, or getting a friend that likes running, and you kind of learn. Doesn't mean you have to emulate them or do exactly what they say, but at least you can avoid some of the downs and ups. I mean, downs that that'll cause you problems, and it'll make you better faster, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's why teams are so important. Like when you in high school or things like that, you're running with a group of people and you see a variety of different things, and you can learn from a variety of different people. All that really increases learning, right? And quite a bit.
You get ideas of what does work for other people, and then you can try it out yourself and see if it works equally as well for you.
Yeah, because if you think about it, sadly, most of life is trial and error, right? We weren't born with the innate sense of this is what you need to be healthy and be a superstar, Nick, kind of thing. No, we all have to try different things and kind of learn. And so from that standpoint, my big example is always Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan didn't want to be a basketball player until I was like junior year in high school, right? I think he turned out to be a pretty good basketball player, right? But that's the question, right? Is how do you learn from other people and your willingness to be exposed to different things?
Yeah. And I think it's also important to curate your information or who you look up to, like your role models, carefully, because if you're following the footsteps of someone, you don't realize they have this whole other side that actually permeates into everything they do, think, and say, you probably don't want to pursue that too closely.
No, absolutely right. I mean, I think it's a tough balance, right? Because a lot of people don't show all the sides of themselves to the real world, right? And so, you know, so it's hard. It's hard, but I think like you said, try it, right? Don't do it religiously just because XYZ did it, right? Kind of thing. You're not gonna be like Mike just because you wear Air Jordans, right? Kind of thing. Try out what works for you and be willing to say, okay, this is not working. Not say like, hey, I need to try harder to be more like Mike. Hey, what Mike's doing, I can't do, right? And I need to go find something else. So, and another role model or a different path, right? But that's the thing. Who says there's one path to anything?
Yeah.
Right. We can just kind of walk to the path that we need to walk on.
Mm-hmm. I heard a concept that I really like, and it's treating your life like a business. And by that, I mean, you establish a board of advisors for your life and different specialists for different things. And before you make any major decisions, you consult your board. Or if you don't have access to these people in reality, then you can just create like a virtual board of the most influential folks on your life. And then just like before you make a decision, think through how they would respond if they were here mentoring you.
No, that's actually a great idea. I think, diversify that board.
Yeah.
People with different perspectives, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you get a balanced view. But no, I think that's a great idea. I think, it's one of the things that helped us be successful. We have this very elite board of advisors, neuroscientists, behavioral psychologists, coaches, human performance experts, nutritionists, and they all have a different perspective. And listening to all of them really kind of helps me make decisions, right? Like I said, I'm not good at all that stuff. I'm an AI guy. I build AI systems, right? And so, and people have 30 years and top their professions are kind of good at that stuff. So, you want to listen to them.
They've gone well past the 10,000 hours.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Well, say that you don't have these experts in your life, but you want to learn in other ways. Let's go on to the question I ask all guests, that if there was a burning of the books, all knowledge on earth is gone, but you get to save the three most impactful works on your life or career, what would you choose and why?
One book that I thought was super important when I was young was Kurt Vonnegut's Cat's Cradle. And what it did was, it talks about the Manhattan Project and the building of a nuclear bomb. And the theme of the story was always, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Right. And I think a lot of people just kind of miss that. The second book that I thought was really super impactful for me was, the first Lord of the Rings series. Right. And, it kind of taught me it's okay to dream. You can dream this whole fantasy world and everything you can do, and you can be a hero in your own story. Right. And so that was kind of neat. And then lastly, Stephen Hawking's book on the foundation of the universe and when he talks about string theory, right? And it's not so much about string theory and how the universe is done, is that there's more we don't know than we know.
Yeah.
Right. And it's better to be curious and keep asking questions, right? Than it's to know things. If you have the answer to everything, you may not even have the right questions. Yeah. Right. And so those are the three books I would choose.
I like that. And I'm very careful about what beliefs and knowledge I hold so close that no amount of other information will break that. Like Walt Thornhill has a theory called the electric universe theory, and it talks about how gravity might not be all that we understand it, and there might be other like electrical forces that are bigger, overarching, that cause gravity to be a dominant force.
Right. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think the idea of gravitons as being like, quantum particles and how they interact with the strong weak force. I mean, I think there's so much we don't know, right? I mean, we hammer at things by breaking apart atoms and stuff like that, but it's like the whole V on Earth thing. We know there's certain nerves that we do program correctly will help us learn all sorts of things, open our mind aperture. We only use 10% after all, right? But we don't know which one of them are in the billion nerves in that bundle, and so we shock the whole thing. And that's like it's like shocking the entire line telecommunication pipe between the U.S. and Europe, right? And you're shocking all the cities and everyone with a cell phone, and then you're not really sure which one you eventually get to the guy you want, but a lot of other people are getting impacted the same way. But it's a good program though. It's helping a lot of people with epilepsy and stuff like that. But the premise of being a long-term learning tool, I kind of question. I think they do too, but I mean, I think there's a lot to think about in regards to truth. And that's why I don't believe in ground truth. That's why I don't believe in like these population maxims. And this is, true for everybody. I don't think there is a truth for everybody. So we have to see.
Okay, let's go on to the lightning round now.
Okay.
Trung, what are you most interested in and researching these days?
How you actually measure emotions through like EEG and stuff like that. Working a lot with neuroscientists and reading neuroscience papers on you. So how do you actually see into the mind, right? Because I think that's the next really great domain that we need to go conquer. I think we understand how heart works, the lungs, even the liver, right? But the thing that controls most of everything is our mind, and we don't understand how that works at all. We're getting there. But you have Alzheimer's patients and stuff like that. So all that work really fascinates me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What's one thing that your tribe doesn't know about you?
Probably I'm a big gamer geek, right? I don't really talk to a lot of people about gaming, right? But and I'm one of those people that like go solo. I don't do like big what do they call them, gatherings or teams, I guess, right? Online. So I'm always a solo player that joins the team at the end, right? So from that standpoint, it's not that I'm unsociable. It's that I use gaming to relax. I'm not a serious gamer, right? If I don't do well, I'm okay, right? And so I rather, not impact too many people around me when I do that. But it's a fun hobby of mine that I probably spend way too much time playing, right? But it's a helpful relax and release, because the nice thing about games and is that you feel a sense of accomplishment when you're building a company, when you're building big things, that take multi years to do. Yeah. Not every day you feel like you accomplished something, right? And at least with a video game, you've done something, right?
The biggest opposition to my sleep throughout my entire life until I stopped playing was video games. So I get that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Are there any final parting words you'd like to leave my audience with?
Spend some time and think how the pandemic affected you. A lot of us either want to pretend it didn't happen, right? Or, we think about it too much. But, just take an emotional assessment of like, what are you doing differently, or what are you thinking about because the pandemic occurred, right? And really seriously take care of that, because I think, the worst thing you do for a trauma, and psychologists tell us all this time, right, is suppress it, right? That's where PTSD comes from and all this other stuff, right? And you really don't want it coming out in at times when it's just not helpful, right? When you're in front of people or meeting with your kids, right? And so figure out, how you feel, write it down, and figure out coping strategies. I think, it's okay. Like I said, it's okay during the pandemic to feel anxious and sad and depressed. The whole world feels a little anxious, sad, and depressed, right? The question is how you cope with it. And I think that's why I like to leave your viewers with. I think, we're definitely raising money on Republic.co. So if you want to invest in our company, we're there, Amplio.ai. But really take care of yourselves and really seriously take a good assessment what the pandemic's done to you. I think that's super important.
And when you say dealing with the trauma, suppression is not a viable solution. I know that for most of my life I did that. And when I started dissecting my behavior, why I said certain things, why I acted in certain ways, I dug way down through all the layers. I realized a lot of times it's because of something that I never addressed. And that by going back and addressing it and thinking through it, feeling it, like allowing myself to experience it again, then I was able to change that behavior, which would come out in seemingly random, non-connected ways.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think, you can't move forward unless you address kind of the holes in the boat, right? Kind of thing. And it's not, I'm not saying you should have a whole breakdown about it, but I mean, certainly you should have like a good idea of like, admit that it has impacted you, right? I think the denial is just not going to be helpful, because like you said, you deny what your body's doing. Like we talk about emotions, and you're denying your emotions or, going with them. It doesn't change the facts on the ground. It doesn't change the chemical capacity of your brain. It doesn't change how you're changing your pathways to make decisions, right? Your behaviors, right? So, I mean, you can ignore it all you want, but, you have to address it eventually. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for your time. It's been great chatting today about the future of health, wellness, performance, how you and Amplio are individualizing things. And I can't wait to see where you guys go from here.
That sounds great. Thank you for having me on, Nick. I really appreciate the time.
I'm Nick Urban with Trung Tran of Amplio. Signing out from mindbodypeak.com. Have a great week.
Take care.
I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and hit the thumbs up. I love knowing who's in the 1% committed to reaching their full potential. Comment 1% below so that I know who you are. For all the resources and links, meet me on my website at mindbodypeak.com. I appreciate you and look forward to connecting with you. As a reminder, the information depicted in this video is for information purposes only. Please consult your primary healthcare professional before making any lifestyle changes.